In the heart of a gleaming luxury tower, a young black woman steps into the grand lobby, not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as the newly appointed chairperson of the board. Dressed simply and confidently, she's met with suspicion, judgment, and open hostility. The moment turns explosive when the arrogant building manager, face twisted in outrage, yells, "Get this scam artist out! Before she steals something!" Security grabs her arm. Residents whisper accusations. She forged it. She's pretending. She doesn't belong here. But what no one realizes is that she owns the penthouse and the power to decide all of their fates. Her steady voice cuts through the noise, not with anger, but authority. In just minutes, the truth will erupt. Careers will crumble and justice will strike fast and clean. What happens when those who judge meet the one they tried to shame? If you believe respect comes before assumptions, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Stay to the end. This story will leave you stunned. The morning sun cast a golden sheen across the towering glass facade of Regency Heights, its sleek silhouette a beacon of wealth. In the city's heart, at 8:45 a.m., a modest sedan rolled to a stop at the curb, its engine humming softly before falling silent. Angela Brown stepped out, her presence understated yet commanding. At 28, she carried the quiet authority of someone who had carved her path, her navy hoodie and dark slacks a deliberate choice to blend into the crowd. In her hand, a well-worn but sturdy leather purse held a single document, the ownership contract for PH29, the penthouse crowning this exclusive residential complex. Angela's dark eyes scanned the entrance, where polished chrome gates gleamed under the watchful lens of security cameras. She adjusted her posture, shoulders squared, and approached the gate, her steps measured but resolute. The air carried a faint chill, mingling with the scent of manicured jasmine hedges lining the property. At the security booth, Michael, a broad-shouldered guard in his mid-40s, leaned forward, his uniform crisp but his expression hardened by routine suspicion. His gaze raked over Angela, lingering on her casual attire, her unadorned purse, her natural hair pulled into a neat bun. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice gravelly, tinged with a condescension that prickled the air. "You here for a cleaning job or a delivery? We don't let just anyone walk in." Angela's lips curved into a faint, composed smile, betraying none of the sting his words carried. "I'm here to register as a resident," she replied, her tone steady, professional. She slid the ownership contract through the booth's narrow window, the paper crisp against the counter. "This is my contract for PH29. Michael's eyebrows arched, a skeptical grunt escaping him as he snatched the document. He flipped through it, his thick fingers brushing the pages without care as if the words, legal, binding, hers, were mere scribbles. "This looks questionable," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. "We'll need to verify this. Wait here." His tone carried a finality, a dismissal that hung heavy between them. Under his breath, barely audible but caught by the security camera's unblinking eye, he added, "People think they can just show up with fake papers these days." Angela stood rooted, her expression unshaken, though the weight of his assumption pressed against her. She glanced at the camera above the booth, its red light a silent witness to the moment. Around her, Regency Heights buzzed with morning activity. A white couple in tailored athleisure passed through the gate, their keycards swiped with a nod from Michael, who offered a curt, "Good morning," without checking their IDs. A delivery van pulled up, its driver waved through after a glance. Yet Angela Brown, the rightful owner of the building's most coveted residence, stood waiting, her presence reduced to an inconvenience. The minutes stretched, each one a deliberate test of her patience. A young woman in a designer coat strode past, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. She cast a sidelong glance at Angela, her lips twitching into a smirk as she whispered to her companion, "She must be lost. This isn't the place for her." The words, though hushed, landed like a slap, but Angela's face remained a mask of calm. She shifted her purse to her other hand, the contract's weight a reminder of her purpose. She wasn't here to argue or plead. She was here to uncover the truth about Regency Heights, a truth buried in complaints from residents who looked like her, who had been dismissed, ignored, or worse. At the 5-minute mark, a second guard emerged from the booth, his badge glinting but his demeanor no warmer. "Still here?" he asked, as if her persistence were an affront. Angela met. His gaze, her voice even but firm. "I'm certain I'm at the right place. I'd like to speak with someone inside to complete my registration." The guard exchanged a look with Michael, a silent agreement passing between them. Michael leaned into the booth's microphone, his voice crackling through the speaker. "Verifications. Taking longer than expected. You sure you're not at the wrong complex? There's a budget one down the road." The suggestion, laced with disdain, hung in the air. Angela's fingers tightened briefly around her purse, the only sign of the anger flickering beneath her composure. "I'm certain," she said, her words clipped but polite. "Please, expedite the process or let me speak with your supervisor." Her request was reasonable, yet it seemed to irritate Michael further. He rolled his eyes, muttering something inaudible to his colleague, who stifled a chuckle. The security camera captured it all, their dismissive gestures, the casual cruelty of their assumptions, the way they reduced Angela Brown to a stereotype without a second thought. A small crowd began to form, residents pausing on their way, in or out drawn by the quiet drama unfolding at the gate. A man in a tailored suit checked his watch, glancing at Angela with thinly veiled impatience, as if her presence delayed his morning. Another resident, an older woman with a designer, handbag, whispered to her friend, "What's she trying to prove?" Their voices, though soft, carried the weight of judgment, each word a thread in the tapestry of prejudice Angela had come to unravel. She stood alone, her silhouette framed against the towering gates, a figure of quiet defiance in a world that assumed she didn't belong. The narrator's voice broke through, rich and resonant, pulling the audience deeper into the moment. Angela Brown, a woman of power and purpose, stands at the threshold of her own home, judged before she's known. Have you ever been dismissed because of how you look? Comment "respect first" below if you believe fairness should come first. In just minutes, this gate will open, not just to Angela, but to a truth that will shake Regency Heights to its core. As the clock ticked toward 9 a.m., Angela's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the city skyline loomed. She knew the wait was no accident, just as she knew the whispers and stares were no coincidence. This was why she had come. Not just to claim her home, but to expose the rot within these walls. The security camera whirred softly, its lens a silent ally, recording every slight, every assumption. Angela Brown was ready, and Regency Heights was not. The hum of the city faded as the scene dissolved into memory, the gleaming gates of Regency Heights giving way to a sunlit street in a modest neighborhood, where a younger Angela Brown, barely 18, stood outside a small community center. Her eyes, bright with ambition, traced the cracked sidewalk where she'd spent countless afternoons tutoring younger kids, her textbooks dog-eared from late-night study sessions. This was where Angela's journey began, not in boardrooms or penthouses, but in a world where every opportunity had to be fought for. The air carried the scent of fresh asphalt and blooming honeysuckle, a reminder of a childhood shaped by resilience. Angela, then a teenager with dreams larger than her circumstances, clutched a scholarship letter to a prestigious university, her ticket to a future she'd vowed to build. The montage shifted, colors warming as Angela Brown navigated her college years. In a crowded lecture hall, she sat front row, her pen flying across pages as professors spoke of economics and leadership. Her peers whispered about her relentless focus, some with admiration, others with envy. Angela didn't notice. She was too busy earning top marks, interning at a local real estate firm and saving every penny for a future she could already see. By 22, she'd graduated with honors, her cap adorned with a single ribbon. A gift from her mother, who'd worked double shifts to support her. That ribbon, now tucked in her purse at Regency Heights, was a quiet reminder of the sacrifices behind her ascent. The scene transitioned to a sleek office where a 24-year-old Angela stood before a panel of executives, her first pitch as a junior analyst. Her voice, steady despite the skeptical gazes of older, mostly white colleagues, outlined a bold strategy for urban development. The room fell silent, then erupted in questions, not all kind. Ambitious but unrealistic, one executive muttered, his tone implying more than his words. Angela's jaw tightened, but she answered each critique with precision, her intellect a shield against doubt. That pitch won her a promotion, the first of many. The narrator's voice wove through the memory, rich and resonant. Angela Brown didn't climb the ladder. She forged it, step by hard-won step. Years blurred into milestones. At 26, Angela earned her MBA, her thesis on equitable housing policies earning quiet praise from professors who rarely gave it. She joined the AVI, board of Regency Heights' parent company, her insights turning struggling properties into thriving communities. Her reputation grew, a problem solver, a visionary, a woman who could silence a room with a single incisive question. Yet, as the montage showed her shaking hands at galas and signing deals in glass-walled offices, shadows lingered. Boardroom. Whispers questioned her fit as a black woman leading an elite institution. Will clients trust her? One director asked behind closed doors. Angela heard the murmurs but never flinched. She'd faced worse, and won. The scene slowed, focusing on a late-night meeting 3 months prior. Angela, now 28 and newly appointed chairperson of Regency Heights, sat at a mahogany table, her dark suit sharp against the room's muted tones. The board's vote to appoint her had been contentious, not for lack of qualifications, but for the unspoken biases of a few holdouts. One director, his voice cloaked in diplomacy, suggested major residents might hesitate to see her as the face of their exclusive community. Angela's response was measured, her eyes locking onto his. My leadership ensures every resident feels valued. No exceptions. The room fell silent, her words a promise and a challenge. That promise led her to the present. The montage shifted to Angela in her modest apartment, poring over resident complaints late into the night. Emails and letters, many from people of color, detailed dismissive treatment, delayed services, and outright hostility at Regency Heights. The numbers were stark. Minority residents were twice as likely to report unfair treatment, yet formal complaints were buried or ignored. Angela's brow furrowed as she read, her fingers tracing a pattern of neglect the previous leadership had overlooked. The narrator's voice deepened. Angela didn't trust reports alone. She needed the truth, raw, unfiltered, firsthand. The final scene showed Angela signing the contract for PH29, the Penthouse, under an alias to keep her identity hidden. She chose modest attire, a hoodie and slacks, to blend in as an ordinary resident. Her plan was simple but bold. Walk into Regency Heights as a stranger, experience the treatment others faced, and expose the rot within. The purchase wasn't just a test, it was a reckoning. As she sealed the envelope with the contract, her expression was one of quiet resolve, her eyes reflecting a fire that had carried her from a cracked sidewalk to the pinnacle of power. The montage faded, returning to the present, where Angela Brown stood at the gates of Regency Heights, her contract still clutched by a skeptical guard. The narrator's voice rose, pulling the audience in. Angela Brown, a trailblazer shaped by grit and vision, stands ready to unveil a truth that will shake this community to its core. Have you ever fought for a place you earned? Comment "respect first" below if you believe everyone deserves a fair chance. The camera lingered on Angela's face, her calm masking a storm of purpose. She wasn't just a resident, she was a force, her journey from a hopeful teenager to a formidable leader fueling her mission. The gates of Regency Heights loomed, but they were no match for the woman who'd already broken through barriers far higher. The heavy glass doors of Regency Heights lobby swung open, admitting Angela Brown into a world of polished opulence. The marble floor gleamed under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, their light refracting in prisms across the walls. At 9 a.m., the air hummed with the quiet efficiency of wealth, residents gliding toward elevators, their footsteps muffled by plush rugs and the faint clink of coffee cups from a nearby lounge. Angela, her navy hoodie a stark contrast to the tailored suits around her, crossed the threshold with purpose. Her leather purse, containing the PH29 ownership contract, felt heavier now, a talisman of truth in a space that seemed to reject her. Presence. She approached the reception desk, her expression composed but alert, ready to test the system she'd come to expose. Behind the sleek counter stood Tina, a young receptionist in her early 20s, her name tag glinting under the recessed lights. Her auburn hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her smile, practiced but brittle, faltered as Angela drew near. The lobby's grandeur seemed to amplify the scrutiny in Tina's glance, her eyes flickering over Angela's casual attire, lingering on the absence of designer labels. "How can I assist you today?" Tina asked, her voice clipped, the warmth reserved for others noticeably absent. Angela Brown set her purse on the counter, her movements deliberate. "I need to register as the owner of PH29, she said, her tone calm yet firm as she slid her contract and ID across the polished surface. The documents, crisp and official, bore her name in bold print, a silent challenge to the assumptions already forming in Tina's mind. Tina's fingers hesitated. Over the papers, her brow creasing as she scanned the contract. A nervous laugh escaped her, sharp and involuntary. "PH29, that's the Penthouse," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. She glanced at Angela's ID, then back at her face, as if searching for a discrepancy that wasn't there. "I'm sorry, but you don't have access to that file. There must be a mistake." Her words, though polite, carried an undercurrent of dismissal, a subtle accusation that Angela didn't belong in the echelons of Regency Heights elite. Angela's gaze held steady, her dark eyes unyielding. "There's no mistake," she replied, her voice a quiet anchor in the rising tension. "Please check the system. My ownership is valid." Her request was reasonable, but Tina's discomfort grew palpable. She tapped at her keyboard, her movements jerky, as if hoping the system would confirm her doubts. The lobby, once a hum of activity, seemed to pause, the air thickening with unspoken judgments. A woman in a tailored cream coat approached, her presence commanding attention. Clara, a wealthy resident in her 50s, carried an air of entitlement as tangible as the designer handbag on her arm. She paused near the desk, her eyes raking over Angela before settling on Tina. "These days, anyone thinks they can just waltz in and claim a penthouse," Clara muttered, loud enough for Angela to hear, her lips curling into a smirk as she turned to another resident. The words landed like a barb, but Angela Brown stood unmoved, her posture a silent rebuke to the condescension. The narrator's voice cut through, rich and resonant, drawing the audience deeper into the moment. "In a place built on prestige, appearances deceive. Angela Brown, a woman of power, faces a wall of prejudice, her every move judged, her legitimacy questioned. Have you ever been dismissed for who you seem to be? Comment, respect first, below if fairness matters to you." Tina's fingers faltered on the keyboard, her eyes darting to Clara, then back to the screen. I'll need to verify this further," she stammered, her tone now tinged with unease. She reached for the phone, her hand trembling slightly. "I'll call someone to handle this, it's protocol." The word protocol felt like a shield, a justification for her reluctance to act. Angela's expression remained impassive, but her fingers brushed the edge of her purse, a subtle gesture of resolve. She'd anticipated this resistance, but its sting was no less sharp. The lobby's atmosphere shifted as more residents lingered, drawn by the quiet drama unfolding at the desk. A man in a pinstripe suit glanced over, his watch catching the light as he whispered to a companion, "What's she trying to do?" A young couple, their arms laden with shopping bags, slowed to watch, their murmurs blending into a low hum of speculation. Angela Brown felt their eyes, each glance a weight. But she stood taller, her presence a quiet defiance against the tide of assumption. "I'd like to speak with the manager," Angela said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Like a blade. The request was calm, measured, but it carried an authority that made Tina flinch. The receptionist's eyes widened, her hand pausing over the phone. "That's not necessary," Tina said, her voice faltering. "I just need to—" She stopped, glancing at the growing crowd, her discomfort now a visible flush on her cheeks. Clara leaned closer to the desk, her voice dripping with condescension. "You should check her story carefully," she said to Tina, loud enough for all to hear. "People try all sorts of tricks to get into places like this." The accusation hung in the air, a challenge to Angela's legitimacy that echoed the guard's earlier dismissal. Angela's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger in her eyes, but she held her ground, her silence more powerful than any retort. The security camera above the desk whirred softly, its lens capturing every detail. Tina's nervous glances, Clara's smug expression, the crowd's growing curiosity. Angela Brown, the woman they underestimated, stood at the center of it all, her contract untouched on the counter, her resolve unshaken. The narrator's voice returned, heavy with anticipation. Angela Brown's truth is moments away from shattering this facade. What happens when prejudice meets power? Stay with us. This story's just beginning. The clock on the lobby wall ticked toward 9:15 a.m., each second a pulse in the rising tension. Angela's hand rested lightly on her purse, her fingers tracing the outline of the contract within. She was here not just to claim her home, but to expose a system that thrived on exclusion. The lobby, with its glittering chandeliers and polished surfaces, was a stage, and Angela Brown was ready to rewrite the script. The lobby of Regency Heights pulsed with a restless energy, its marble expanse now a crucible for the mounting tension. At 9:15 a.m., the chandeliers cast a sterile glow over the scene, their light glinting off the reception desk where Angela Brown stood, her presence a quiet storm amidst the gathering crowd. Her ownership contract for PH29 lay untouched on the counter, a symbol of her rightful place dismissed by the receptionist's refusal to act. Angela's dark eyes, steady and unyielding, held a fire that belied her calm exterior. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and whispered judgments, each glance from the onlookers a silent accusation. She had asked for the manager, her voice a blade of authority slicing through the receptionist's excuses, but the response was not what she expected. Tina, the young receptionist, her auburn bun slightly askew from nervous fidgeting, clutched the phone as if it were a lifeline. Her eyes darted between Angela and the growing cluster of residents, their murmurs a low hum that filled the space. "I'm calling security," Tina said, her voice trembling with a mix of protocol and panic. "You're causing a disturbance. You need to leave." The words, though framed as policy, carried the weight of assumption, a verdict passed before evidence was sought. Angela Brown tilted her head slightly, her expression unshaken, but the sting of being branded an intruder in her own home was a quiet wound. The glass doors swung open, admitting Michael, the guard from the gate, and Tom, a wiry man with a security badge pinned crookedly to his uniform. Their boots echoed on the marble, a deliberate cadence that amplified the room's tension. Michael's stern gaze locked onto Angela, his earlier skepticism now hardened into resolve. "Ma'am, you're trespassing," he declared, his voice loud enough to carry to the onlookers. "Leave now, or we'll escort you out. This isn't your place." Tom, standing at his shoulder, nodded, his hand resting on a radio clipped to his belt, a gesture that felt more like a threat than a precaution. Angela's fingers brushed the edge of her purse where her ID and contract rested, a tangible truth against their accusations. "I'm here to register my home," she said, her tone even, each word measured to deny them the excuse of anger. "Check my documents. I'm not leaving until this is resolved." Her defiance, cloaked in professionalism, seemed to unsettle Tom, whose eyes flickered briefly to Michael, seeking guidance. But Michael doubled down, stepping closer, his bulk a silent intimidation. "You're causing trouble," he said, his voice low but sharp. "We don't play games here." The crowd swelled, residents drawn by the spectacle like moths to a flame. A man in a pinstripe suit, his phone already recording, leaned toward a woman beside him, muttering, "She's probably trying to scam her way in." A young couple, their shopping bags rustling, whispered, "I bet she forged those papers." Their voices wove a tapestry of suspicion, each thread tightening the noose around Angela Brown's legitimacy. Clara, the wealthy resident from earlier, stood near the elevators, her cream coat pristine, her lips curled in a smirk. "This is what happens when standards slip," she shouted, her words a dart aimed at Angela's back. The narrator's voice broke through, rich with gravitas, pulling the audience into the heart of the conflict. Surrounded, accused, dismissed, Angela Brown stands alone, her truth buried under a tide of prejudice. Have you ever been branded an outsider in a place you belong? Comment, "Respect first" below if you believe fairness should prevail. Angela's gaze swept the room, taking in the faces, some curious, some hostile, none willing to question the narrative unfolding. Her phone, tucked in her hand, subtly recorded the scene, capturing the guard's posturing, Tina's nervous silence, and the crowd's growing audacity. She stood taller, her posture a silent rebuke to their assumptions. "I've asked to speak with the manager," she repeated, her voice a calm anchor in the storm. "If you won't process my registration, get someone who can." Her words, precise and unyielding, seemed to pierce Tina's facade. The receptionist's hands trembled as she set down the phone, her eyes darting to the guards for support. Michael crossed his arms, his badge catching the light. "You're not hearing us," he said, his tone edging toward menace. "This is private property, and you're not on the resident list. Leave or we'll make you." Tom stepped forward, his radio crackling as he murmured something to dispatch, the word "trespasser" audible in the static. The accusation hung heavy, a label that sought to erase Angela Brown's identity as the owner of PH29, the woman who held the highest authority in this very community. Clara's voice cut through again, sharp and deliberate. "She's probably one of those fraudsters you read about," she said to the man beside her, her tone loud enough to draw nods from the crowd. "Trying to sneak into a penthouse? Pathetic." The words were a match to kindling, igniting murmurs of agreement among the onlookers. A woman with a designer handbag added, "I saw something like this online. People fake documents all the time." Angela's jaw tightened, a flicker of frustration in her eyes, but she held her ground, her silence a powerful counterpoint to their noise. The security camera above the desk whirred, its lens a silent witness to the injustice unfolding. Angela Brown, the chairperson of Regency Heights, stood at the center of a growing storm, her contract ignored, her presence vilified. The narrator's voice returned, heavy with anticipation. "Angela Brown's truth is a spark waiting to ignite. How long can prejudice stand against power? Stay with us, this reckoning is closer than they think." The clock on the lobby wall ticked toward 9:20 a.m., each second a pulse in the escalating drama. Angela's hand rested lightly on her purse, her fingers steady despite the chaos around her. She was no stranger to being underestimated, but this moment, surrounded by hostility in the heart of her domain, was a test of her resolve. The crowd's whispers grew louder, the guards' stances more aggressive, but Angela Brown was not here to retreat. She was here to expose, to challenge, to change. The lobby of Regency Heights thrummed with a charged silence, the air taut as if holding its breath. At 9:20 a.m., the marble expanse gleamed under the chandelier's cold light, casting long shadows across the crowd of residents who lingered, their phones poised to capture the unfolding drama. Angela Brown stood at the reception desk, her navy hoodie a quiet defiance against the opulence surrounding her. Her ownership contract for PH29 lay ignored on the counter, a testament to her legitimacy that the receptionist, Tina, and the security guards, Michael and Tom, had dismissed with accusations of trespassing. Angela's dark eyes burned with resolve. her calm a fortress against the hostility swirling around her. The crowd's whispers, accusations of fraud, murmurs of "she doesn't belong," formed a chorus of prejudice, but the stage was about to shift with the arrival of a new player. The glass doors parted with a hiss and Nathan, the building manager, strode into the lobby. At 32, he carried the swagger of unchecked privilege, his tailored blazer and polished shoes a stark contrast to Angela's understated attire. His sharp jaw and slicked-back hair gave him the air of a man accustomed to command. His status as the nephew of the management company's CEO, an invisible crown. His eyes, cold and calculating, swept the room, landing on Angela with a smirk that curled like smoke. The crowd parted slightly, their murmurs fading as Nathan's presence demanded attention. Tina, still clutching the phone, exhaled in relief, as if his arrival absolved her of responsibility. "What's the problem here?" Nathan's voice cut through the lobby, smooth but edged with disdain. He stepped to the desk, barely glancing at Angela Brown. "I hear we have someone claiming to own a penthouse they don't belong in." His words dripped with condescension, each syllable a deliberate jab. He leaned against the counter, his posture casual but predatory, as if sizing up an opponent already defeated. Angela met his gaze, her expression unwavering. "I'm Angela Brown, the owner of PH29, she said, her voice steady, carrying the weight of truth. "Your staff refused to process my registration. I'd like you to verify my ownership now." Her request was calm, professional, but it seemed to ignite something in Nathan. His smirk widened, his eyes narrowing as he flicked a glance at her. "Contract without touching it." "Look, Ms. Brown, if that's even your name," Nathan said, his tone mocking. "This isn't how things work at Regency Heights. You're causing a scene, probably for some scam or to smear our reputation." He crossed his arms, his blazer straining slightly, as if his ego needed room to expand. The crowd stirred, a few residents nodding in agreement, their phones still, recording. Angela's fingers tightened briefly on her purse, but her face remained a mask of composure, her silence a challenge to his arrogance. The narrator's voice broke through, resonant and heavy with portent. "Nathan thinks he's untouchable, his power a shield forged by family ties. But Angela Brown's truth is a blade, and it's sharper than he knows. Have you ever faced someone who judged you before listening? Comment, respect first below, if you believe truth should prevail." Clara, the wealthy resident in her cream coat, stepped closer, her designer handbag swinging like a pendulum. "She's probably forging signatures," she said to Nathan, her voice loud enough to carry across the lobby. "I read about these schemes, people faking documents to steal property." Her words, laced with venom, drew gasps from the crowd, fueling their suspicions. A man in a pinstripe suit nodded, muttering, "She's bold to try this here." The accusations piled like stones, each one aimed at burying Angela Brown's legitimacy. Nathan seized the moment, his smirk morphing into a sneer. "I'm calling the police," he declared, pulling out his phone with a flourish. "If you're smart, you'll leave before this gets worse. We don't tolerate fraud here." He dialed, his eyes never leaving Angela, as if daring her to flinch. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a woman whispering, "She's probably filming this for attention." Another added, "I bet she's not even from this city." Angela Brown stood firm, her posture unyielding, her phone subtly capturing every word, every glance, a silent archive of their prejudice. "I've done nothing wrong," Angela said, her voice low but resonant, cutting through the noise. "Verify my contract, that's all I'm asking." Her words were a lifeline thrown to reason, but Nathan dismissed them with a wave of his hand. "You're not fooling anyone," he said, his tone sharp as a blade. "This is a private community, and we protect our residents from people like you." The phrase, "people like you," hung heavy, a coded accusation that drew approving nods from the crowd. Tina, behind the desk, looked down, her hands fidgeting with a stack of papers, her silence complicit despite her visible unease. Suan, security camera word above. its lens a cold observer of the escalating injustice. Angela's presence, calm and unbowed, stood in stark contrast to Nathan's bluster. Her dark eyes flicked to the crowd, taking in their faces, Clara's smug satisfaction, the man in the pinstripe suit's eager recording, the couple's whispered gossip. She was a lone figure in a sea of judgment, but her resolve was unshakable. The narrator's voice returned, thick with anticipation. Nathan's arrogance is a house of cards, and Angela Brown holds the wind. How long can power ignore the truth? Stay with us. This storm is about to break. The clock ticked toward 9:25 a.m., the lobby a pressure cooker of tension. Nathan's call to the police connected, his voice loud and theatrical as he reported a potential fraudster. Angela Brown's hand rested lightly on her purse, her fingers steady despite the chaos. She had faced skepticism before, but this, being branded a criminal in her domain, was a new kind of wound. Yet, she stood ready, her truth a weapon she'd wield at the perfect moment. The crowd's eyes bore into her, but Angela was not here to be diminished. She was here to dismantle a system that thrived on exclusion, and Nathan's arrogance was about to meet its match. The lobby of Regency Heights crackled with tension, its marble expanse a stage for a drama teetering on the edge of explosion. At 9:25 a.m., the chandelier's sterile glow illuminated a scene thick with hostility, the air heavy with the scent of polished wood and brewing conflict. Angela Brown stood resolute at the reception desk, her navy hoodie a quiet rebellion against the opulence around her. Her PH-29 ownership contract, still untouched on the counter, was a silent testament to her legitimacy, dismissed by the building manager Nathan's smug accusations and the crowd's growing murmurs. The security guards, Michael and Tom, flanked her like sentinels of a false order, their presence a physical echo of Nathan's claim that she was a fraudster. Angela's dark eyes burned with unyielding resolve, her calm a beacon in the storm of prejudice swirling around her. The glass doors parted with a soft whoosh, admitting a police officer whose boots thudded against the marble, each step amplifying the room's charged silence. His badge gleamed under the lights, his expression neutral but wary as he surveyed the scene. Nathan, his tailored blazer crisp despite his escalating bluster, stepped forward, his smirk a mask of false authority. "Officer, we've got a situation," he said, his voice loud and theatrical. "This woman's claiming ownership of a penthouse with what's a fake contract. She's causing a disturbance and refusing to leave." His words, sharp as a blade, drew nods from the crowd, their phones still recording, capturing every moment of Angela Brown's public trial. The officer turned to Angela, his hand resting lightly on his radio. "Ma'am, I need to see your ID and any proof you belong here," he said, his tone professional but edged with skepticism, influenced by Nathan's accusations. "If you can't provide that, you'll need to come with me." Angela's fingers brushed her purse, her movements deliberate as she retrieved her ID and contract. "Verify PH-29's records," she said, her voice steady, a quiet challenge to the chaos. "I'm happy to wait for the truth." She handed over the documents, her gaze locking onto the officers, unflinching despite the weight of the crowd's stares. Nathan scoffed, his sneer widening. "Check her story. It won't hold up," he said, his voice dripping with certainty. He leaned closer to the officer, lowering his tone but ensuring Angela could hear. "She's probably part of some scam ring. We've had issues like this before." The lie, delivered with the ease of practiced arrogance, ignited the crowd's whispers into a roar. Clara, the wealthy resident in her cream coat, stepped forward, her designer handbag swinging. "She's faking it," she declared, her voice carrying across the lobby. "I saw a story online about people forging documents to steal properties like this." Her accusation, venomous and loud, drew gasps and murmurs of agreement, the crowd's hostility coalescing into a unified front. Angela Brown stood firm, her posture a silent rebuke to their assumptions. Her phone, discreetly angled, recorded the scene. The officer's scrutiny, Nathan's theatrics, Clara's pointed barbs. "I've done nothing wrong," she said, her voice low but resonant, cutting through the din. "Check the system. My name is on that contract." Her words, calm and precise, seemed to rattle Tina, the receptionist, who stood behind the desk, her hands fidgeting with a pen, her eyes darting to the floor. Tina's silence, though tinged with unease, was a complicity Angela noted but didn't. "Address?" "Not yet." The narrator's voice broke through, heavy with anticipation. Surrounded, accused, humiliated, Angela Brown stands in the eye of a storm, her truth a spark waiting to ignite. "Have you ever been branded a criminal for simply existing? Comment respect first below if you believe justice should prevail." The crowd grew bolder, their phones a forest of lenses capturing Angela's every move. A man in a pinstripe suit, his watch glinting, whispered loudly, "She's probably filming this for some viral stunt." A young woman with shopping bags added, "I bet she's not even from here. Look at her." Their words, sharp as shards, piled onto the accusations, each one a weight meant to crush Angela's legitimacy. Clara, emboldened, turned to the officer. "You should check her background," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "People like her don't just buy penthouses." The phrase, laced with prejudice, hung heavy, drawing nods from the onlookers. The officer flipped through Angela's contract, his brow furrowing as he compared it to her ID. "This looks legitimate, but I need to confirm," he said, his voice cautious. He glanced at Nathan, who rolled his eyes. "It's a good fake." Nathan insisted, his voice rising. "She's wasting everyone's time. Get her out of here." His words, a command wrapped in arrogance, spurred the crowd's murmurs into a crescendo. A resident shouted, "This is why we need stricter security." Another added, "She's making a mockery of our community." Angela Brown's jaw tightened, a flicker of frustration in her eyes, but her composure held, a fortress against their venom. The security camera whirred overhead, its lens capturing every detail. Nathan's smug gestures, Clara's pointed accusations, Tina's silent complicity. Angela, the woman they sought to erase, stood at the center, her phone still recording, preserving the truth they refused to see. The narrator's voice returned, thick with portent. "The clock's ticking, and Angela Brown's truth is a tide about to turn. How long can prejudice stand against power? Stay with us. This reckoning is moments away." The clock on the lobby wall edged toward 9:30 a.m., each tick a pulse in the escalating drama. Angela's hand rested lightly on her purse, her fingers steady despite the chaos. The officer's radio crackled, a voice confirming he was checking the records. Nathan's smirk faltered for a moment, a crack in his facade, but he quickly recovered, his arrogance a shield he wasn't ready to drop. Angela Brown, the chairperson of Regency Heights, stood alone, her truth a weapon she held in reserve. The crowd's hostility was afire, but she was the spark, ready to ignite a change they couldn't imagine. The lobby of Regency Heights stood frozen, a tableau of prejudice poised to shatter. At 9:30 a.m., the chandelier's cold light bathed the marble expanse in a sterile glow, illuminating the crowd of residents whose whispers had turned to a roar of accusations. Angela Brown stood at the reception desk, her navy hoodie a quiet defiance against the opulence, her PH-29 ownership contract still ignored on the counter. The police officer holding her ID and contract hesitated, his radio crackling with the promise of answers. Nathan, the building manager, leaned against the desk, his tailored blazer and smug smirk a shield of arrogance, while Clara's venomous barbs and the crowd's hostile murmurs fueled the tension. Angela's dark eyes, unyielding, held a spark of certainty, her calm a prelude to a reckoning. The air, thick with the scent of polished wood and brewing conflict, crackled with anticipation. Angela Brown reached into her purse, her movements deliberate, and drew out her phone. The crowd's murmurs faltered, their phones still recording, capturing her every gesture. "Margaret," she said into the device, her voice low but commanding, cutting through the lobby's din like a blade. "It's Angela Brown. I'm at Regency Heights, and I need you in the lobby now. Access the ownership database for PH-29. Her words, precise and authoritative, sent a ripple through the room, a subtle shift in the atmosphere that Nathan didn't yet grasp. Tina, the receptionist, froze behind the desk, her hands clutching a pen as if it could anchor her against the coming storm. The glass doors burst open, the sound reverberating like a thunderclap. Margaret, the CEO of the parent company, strode in, her sharp suit and steely gaze commanding silence. At her side, the regional director, tablet in hand, and a communications officer, badge glinting, followed with urgent purpose. The crowd parted, their whispers dying as Margaret's presence reshaped the room. Nathan's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing as he registered the shift, but he stood his ground, his arrogance a fragile armor. Clara, in her cream coat, stepped back, her designer handbag clutched tightly, sensing a change she couldn't name. Margaret's eyes locked. On to Angela, a flicker of recognition softening her stern expression. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice icy, directed at Nathan. Before he could respond, she tapped her tablet, pulling up the ownership records. The screen glowed, and she turned it toward the officer. PH29, registered to Angela. "Brown," she said, her tone unyielding. "And this is Angela Brown, chairperson of Regency Heights Board." The words landed like a gavel, each syllable a blow to the facade of prejudice that had held the lobby captive. Nathan staggered back, his face draining of color. I had no idea," he stammered, his voice cracking, his earlier confidence crumbling like ash. Tina's pen clattered to the desk, her eyes wide with shock, her hands trembling. Clara's smirk vanished, her lips parting in a silent gasp as she shrank into the crowd. The officer clutching Angela's contract looked from the tablet to her face, his skepticism replaced by unease. The crowd's phones lowered slightly, their murmurs replaced by a stunned silence as the truth settled over them like a storm cloud breaking. Angela Brown stepped forward, her posture commanding, her voice steady but laced with steel. "You didn't check the contract," she said to Nathan, her gaze piercing. "You judged me before you even opened the system. That's not a mistake, it's a pattern." Her words, calm but relentless, echoed in the vast lobby, an indictment of the prejudice that had branded her a fraudster. She turned to the communications officer, her tone unwavering. "Pull up the CCTV footage from this morning. Show them." The officer nodded, connecting her tablet to a lobby screen mounted above the desk. The display flickered to life, revealing grainy but clear footage. Michael's dismissive mutterings at the gate, Tina's nervous refusal to check the system, Clara's venomous remarks, Nathan's sneering accusations. Each frame was a mirror held up to the crowd, reflecting their complicity in stark clarity. Residents shifted uncomfortably, some looking away, others staring in horror as their voices echoed back, accusing Angela of crimes she didn't commit. The narrator's voice cut through, resonant with triumph. "In 7 minutes, the truth flips the script. Angela Brown isn't just a resident. She's the boss, and her power is undeniable. Have you ever seen justice turn the tables? Comment, respect first below if you believe truth should triumph." Nathan's hands clenched, his jaw working as he struggled to find words. "The contract looked suspicious," he protested, his voice weak, a desperate grasp at justification. Angela's eyes narrowed, her calm unyielding. "You didn't look at it," she said, her words a quiet thunder. "You saw me and decided I didn't belong." Her accusation hung in the air, unanswerable, as Tina's gaze dropped to the floor, her face flushed with shame. Clara, clutching her handbag, took another step back, her earlier bravado replaced by a flicker of dread. Margaret's voice sliced through the silence. "I'm horrified," she said, her eyes sweeping the crowd. "This is unacceptable. Angela, what do you want to do?" The question, directed to the chairperson, shifted the room's power irrevocably. Angela Brown stood taller, her presence filling the space. "Pull every resident complaint from the past 2 years," she said, her voice steady. "Especially from people of color. I want the full history of this building's management." Her command, precise and authoritative, Sent the communications. Officer scrambling, her fingers flying across the tablet. The lobby screen continued to loop the CCTV footage, a relentless reminder of the morning's injustices. Angela's phone, still in her hand, held her recording, a parallel archive of truth. The crowd, once eager to judge, now stood in uneasy silence, their phones lowered, their accusations silenced. The narrator's voice returned, thick with anticipation. Angela Brown's truth has shattered the facade. What happens when power meets prejudice? Stay with us. This story's climax is here. The clock ticked toward 9:35 a.m., the lobby a crucible of change. Angela Brown, the woman they had dismissed, stood at its center, her authority undeniable. Nathan's arrogance lay in ruins, Tina's complicity exposed, Clara's venom silenced. The officer handed back her ID, his expression apologetic. Angela's gaze swept the room, a promise of accountability in her eyes. She was not just a resident, she was the force that would reshape Regency Heights, and the reckoning had only begun. The lobby of Regency Heights lay hushed, a cathedral of marble, and glass transformed into a courtroom of accountability. At 9:35 a.m., the chandelier's sterile light cast stark shadows across the crowd, their phones now lowered, their whispers silenced by the weight of Angela Brown's revealed authority. The chairperson stood at the reception desk, her navy hoodie a symbol of her deliberate anonymity. Now she'd like a cloak to reveal her power. The CCTV footage looped on the lobby screen, a relentless mirror of Nathan's sneers, Tina's hesitation, and Clara's venom, each frame a nail in the coffin of their prejudice. Margaret, the CEO, stood beside Angela, her tablet glowing with the truth of PH29's ownership. The police officer, his earlier skepticism replaced by deference, stepped back, handing Angela her ID. The air, thick with the scent of polished wood and unspoken regret, pulsed with the promise of justice. Angela Brown's gaze swept the room, her dark eyes a beacon of resolve. "Pull every resident complaint from the past 2 years," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the silence like a gavel. "Especially from people of color. I want the full history of this building's management." Her command, precise and unyielding, sent Margaret's fingers flying across her tablet, the communications officer at her side already accessing the database. The crowd stirred, their faces a mosaic of shock and unease, as if sensing the ground shifting beneath them. Nathan, his tailored blazer now a hollow armor, stood frozen, his earlier arrogance reduced to a pale, trembling shell. The tablet's screen flickered, revealing a cascade of complaints, emails, forms, and voicemails detailing dismissed requests, delayed services, and outright hostility toward minority residents. Margaret's voice, tight with controlled fury, summarized the findings. Dozens of reports, many suppressed, most involving Nathan's direct oversight. The lobby screen shifted, displaying grainy footage of past incidents. A black resident denied elevator access, an Asian couple ignored at the desk, a Hispanic family's maintenance request buried. Each clip was a testament to a pattern Angela had come to expose, her mission now laid bare. Angela turned to Nathan, her expression calm but relentless. "You, Michael, and Tom are terminated. Effective immediately," she declared, her voice a quiet thunder that echoed across the marble expanse. "Your actions violate everything this community stands for." The words landed like a verdict, final and irrevocable. Nathan's jaw dropped, his hands clenching as he stammered. "You can't, I'm connected to—" Angela cut him off, her gaze piercing. "Your connections don't excuse your prejudice," she said, her tone unyielding. Michael and Tom, standing near the desk, exchanged panicked glances, their badges glinting uselessly under the chandeliers. The narrator's voice broke through, resonant with triumph. "Justice isn't loud, it's undeniable. Angela Brown's authority reshapes Regency Heights, and the guilty face the consequences. Have you ever seen accountability strike so swiftly?" Comment respect first below if you believe fairness should prevail. Clara, the resident in her cream coat, stepped forward, her designer handbag clutched tightly, her earlier venom replaced by nervous contrition. "Ms. Brown, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice faltering, her eyes darting to the crowd for support. "I didn't mean to offend." Angela's gaze locked onto hers, a flicker of steel in her expression. "Your apology doesn't erase the harm," she said, her words measured but sharp. "Change your behavior, not just your words." Clara shrank back, her face flushing, her attempt at redemption rebuffed in front of the silent onlookers. Tina, behind the desk, braced herself, her auburn bun unraveling slightly, her hands trembling. She expected dismissal, her silence throughout the ordeal a mark against her. Angela's eyes softened briefly as they met Tina's, but her voice remained firm. "You saw the wrong but didn't act," she said, her tone a challenge. "That's a start, but it's not enough." Tina's gaze dropped, tears welling, but Angela's words held a promise of accountability, not yet a verdict. The crowd watched, their earlier hostility replaced by a solemn witnessing of justice unfolding. The lobby screen continued to loop the morning's footage, a stark reminder of the prejudice Angela Brown had faced. Residents shifted uncomfortably, some slipping toward the elevators, others staring at the floor, their complicity exposed. The police officer, now a bystander, nodded to Angela, his earlier suspicion replaced by respect. Margaret, her tablet still in hand, addressed the crowd. "This ends today," she said, her voice echoing Angela's resolve. "Regency Heights will be a place of fairness, or it will answer to Ms. Brown." The narrator's voice returned, thick with anticipation. "Angela Brown's truth has torn down the facade of prejudice. What happens when a community faces its flaws? Stay with us. This transformation is just beginning." The clock ticked toward 9:40 a.m., the lobby a crucible of change. Angela stood at its center, her presence a force that commanded silence and respect. Nathan's shoulders slumped as he gathered his things, Michael and Tom following, their footsteps heavy on the marble. Clara retreated to the crowd, her apology rejected, her status diminished. Tina remained behind the desk, her fate uncertain but her potential noted. Angela Brown, the chairperson, had not just exposed injustice. She had begun to dismantle it, her authority a beacon for a new standard. The crowd, once eager to judge, now stood in awe, their phones silent, their whispers stilled. Justice had been served, and Angela's work was far from over. The lobby of Regency Heights stood transformed, its marble expanse no longer a stage for prejudice but a testament to accountability. At 9:40 a.m., the chandelier's glow softened, as if reflecting the shift in the air. Angela Brown, the chairperson, stood at the reception desk, her navy hoodie a symbol of her deliberate anonymity, now replaced by undeniable authority. The crowd, once a chorus of accusation, watched in stunned silence, their phones stilled by the weight of her justice. Nathan, Michael, and Tom had been escorted out, their terminations a swift verdict against their bias. Clara's failed apology hung in the air, a lesson in accountability, while Tina, the receptionist, stood behind the counter, her trembling hands betraying her fear of judgment. Angela's dark eyes, resolute yet discerning, turned to her, signaling a new chapter for Regency Heights. "Tina," Angela said, her voice firm but carrying a note of possibility. "You saw the wrong but didn't act. That's a start, not enough." Tina's auburn bun sagged, her eyes welling with tears as she braced for dismissal. But Angela Brown's gaze softened, seeing not just complicity but potential. "Effective immediately, your interim manager," she declared, her words echoing across the lobby. "You'll get training and support, but I expect you to lead with fairness." Tina's breath caught, her shock mirrored by gasps from the residents. I won't let you down, Ms. Brown," she stammered, her voice trembling with gratitude and resolve. Angela nodded, her expression a silent charge to rise to the challenge. Margaret, the CEO, stood beside Angela, her tablet alive with new directives. Regency Heights will set a new standard, Angela announced, her voice a beacon of change. Every resident, regardless of race, deserves respect. We're overhauling training, tying staff bonuses to equitable treatment, and introducing anonymous surveys to track disparities. Her words, clear and commanding, reshaped the room's purpose. A new sign appeared behind the desk, its words bold. All residents deserve respect, dignity, and fair service. Contact our chairperson if we fall short. Angela's direct line was listed below, a promise of accountability etched in steel. The key. Scene shifted, the lobby fading to a sunlit morning 6 months later. Angela Brown, now in casual jeans and a sweater, stepped into Regency Heights unannounced, her presence no longer a test but a celebration. The air carried the scent of fresh coffee and blooming jasmine from the courtyard. Residents greeted her with warm nods, their faces reflecting a community reborn. The reception desk, now managed by Tina, gleamed with efficiency, her confidence, quiet testament to Angela's faith. A young black couple approached the counter, their maintenance request processed with a smile, no hesitation in sight. The lobby screen, once a mirror of prejudice, now displayed community updates, a symbol of transparency. The narrator's voice wove through, rich with triumph. Angela Brown didn't just expose injustice, she built a legacy of fairness. Have you ever seen a community transformed by one woman's resolve? Comment respect first below, if you believe in change. The final scene rose. Angela standing on her penthouse balcony, the city skyline stretching before her. The evening light bathed Regency Heights in gold, its courtyard alive with residents mingling, their voices a harmonious hum. Her phone buzzed with emails, apologies from some, like Clara, still learning to change. Thanks from others, like the black couple whose voices had been heard. Angela Brown read each message, her expression a blend of quiet pride and unwavering resolve. She turned a place of exclusion into a beacon of equity, her leadership a promise kept. The narrator's voice returned, resonant with hope. Angela. Brown's vision reshaped Regency Heights, proving that truth and justice can rebuild what prejudice tears down. Share this story to inspire change, and let us know where you're watching from. Comment respect first to stand with her legacy. The clock struck 7 p.m., the balcony a vantage point for Angela's triumph. She leaned against the railing, her silhouette a symbol of power earned through grit and grace. Regency Heights, once a fortress of bias, now stood as a testament to her will, a community where every resident could belong. What an incredible journey we've shared today. Angela Brown's stand against prejudice at Regency Heights reminds us that truth and justice can transform even the most entrenched systems. What moved you most about her story? Was it her unshakable resolve, the swift reckoning, or the community's rebirth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear how this story resonates with you. If you believe respect comes first, hit that like button, share this video to spark change, and subscribe to catch our next tale of triumph. A huge thank you for joining us on this powerful ride. Your support means the world. Until next time, keep standing for fairness, and we'll see you in the comments or our next video. Stay inspired and take care.